Hello and welcome to the next Dragon Plus live stream where we discuss more of the content that's heading into each issue of Dragon Plus and also the design, the development, and running of Dungeons & Dragons content. This week we have some special guests that might be familiar for those of you with the Dungeons & Dragons brand, but also those of you familiar with the Magic the Gathering brand as well. We have James Wyatt.
Hi.
Kat Kruger, and Chris Tulloch.
How's it going?
We have some Extra Life discussions to take place this week, but also taking a look at the new Magic campaign setting set in Ixalan and where it might cross over quite nicely with Tomb of Annihilation and Schult. But before we dive into that, I would love to get a quick introduction from each of you, your role in the company and with Dungeons & Dragons.
So, I'm James Wyatt. I'm a senior story designer on the Magic the Gathering team now. I've been working on Magic for about 3.5 years after 14 years of working on Dungeons & Dragons, so I'm an old man. My role at the company is to be crotchety. No, I'm the weird uncle, actually, to all the 30-somethings in the company. Top that.
Well, I'm actually here not as a wizard. I'm a freelance writer, a YA author. I have my own studio called Steampunk Unicorn Studio, where I write freelance entertainment and gaming and media properties, and I've been doing that for over 10 years.
So we interviewed Kat a couple of issues ago in Dragon Plus, along with Rob Gruber up in Good Times Games in Canada, and Matt James as well. So we learned a little bit about your story, your introduction to D&D, and you were teaching Dungeons & Dragons as well?
Yeah. Well, Chris actually introduced me to Dungeons & Dragons. That was our little meet cute. And
we heartily endorse that version of meet cute.
And that basically, for the first year, we were living on opposite coasts. I was in Halifax, he's in Seattle, and I started teaching creative writing through Dungeons & Dragons at an at-risk school in Halifax called McPhee Center for Creative Learning, and I've since used it as a teaching tool.
Nice.
Yeah.
And if you did miss the interview, we'll put out a link later on so folks can just take a look at it. And Mr. Tulloch?
Hi, everybody. So I'm Chris. I work on Magic the Gathering as an associate brand manager now. I spent the first 9 years of my Wizards of the Coast career working on Dungeons & Dragons, the Dungeons & Dragons organized play programs. I started out here working on those and transitioned over to the Magic team after they wanted to bring me over to kind of help out with a lot of the store play programs and such for Magic, and now that's what I do. So I do play programs for Magic and some other fun stuff in addition to all the other things I can get my hands on at Wizards. So I do like being creative and helping out with other teams as the need arises.
Well, welcome to the live stream. Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, we're going to be talking a bit about Ixalan, the Magic setting block. What is the correct terminology?
It's a block, it's a plane, it's a world, it's your imagination.
So talking a bit about Magic and Ixalan and where it crosses into Tomb of Annihilation and Schult. If you do have any questions regarding anything we're talking about today, please, by all means, throw it into chat, preface it with question. We also had a suggestion last week for Adam Lee's Extra Life donation. If you have suggestions for what Adam Lee should use for his Extra Life donation page, please put it into chat as well. We're continuing to collect and collate those answers. And for those of you that have been watching the Dragon Plus live stream for a little bit now, we're, I think, about a month and a half into all these crazy endeavors. This is our new studio layout. I don't know if you saw the old studio layout.
No.
Very exciting. It was a table, the Dragon Talk layout. We decided to change up the visuals just to distinguish the two live streams a bit. If we've got Dragon Talk and Dragon Plus, the names are a bit close.
Where's the dungeons part?
How about Dungeon Talk?
We also have the Dungeon Delve podcast.
Oh, there we are.
We do have another one for that. So before we dive into Ixalan and Schultz, I did also want to bring up the fact that October 6th we're releasing Betrayal at Baldur's Gate.
Ooh.
And I believe that Chris and Kat, you have a haunt in the new expansion.
Yep.
2 haunts.
2 haunts.
Yeah.
Yep, 2 haunts.
What can you tell us a little bit about the haunts without revealing too much?
Sure. Do you want to talk about your haunt, or the one that you led, I should say?
Yeah,
And then I can talk about the one I
So
led.
mine is called it's called the Gulf-sized Tree. So anybody who's familiar with D&D history, which I wasn't at the time, it's this tree that kind of sprang out from a stake that was still too raw, and it's like a vampire tree, and it sends out all these blights, and that is what my haunt is about, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
I think we've got the visuals of the box up on the screen. I think we've got a couple of shots from the adventure, from where the Gulfiest tree originally came from.
The Sunless Citadel.
Sunless
by Bruce
Great
Cordell.
adventure. Yeah, fantastic.
It's the first 3rd edition D&D
Yeah.
adventure.
I remember it
I
well.
remember the day.
I remember when that came out.
And being a homeowner now, I can appreciate the terrors of a vampire tree.
Yeah.
Blackberries.
Blackberry, yes.
Right.
And what's the vine? The morning glory. Morning glory and
Morning glory.
blackberry bramble seem to be ever present and never able to be defeated. So what was the 2 haunts you mentioned? There's the
Yes.
Gulfiest tree, and what would the second
Yeah, there's
haunt
another one that's called Master of Illusion, and basically what happens there is the traitor that is revealed is actually a nefarious illusionist that is basically trying to summon demons from beyond to wreak havoc on Baldur's Gate. So that's a lot of fun too.
When I was a kid, I wrote an adventure for Dungeon Magazine.
Did you now?
With an illusionist villain. That was
Yeah,
the point, yeah.
I love the idea of it involves Yugoloths actually,
Oh, cool.
which isn't quite apparent if you actually read the adventure unless you kind of know the D&D lore, right? And then you're like, oh, that's a Yugoloth, right? But yeah, I love the idea of illusionists being bad guys. They make great bad guys, and the haunt itself, I think, is a lot of fun for the traitor and for the other players the heroes as they try to thwart the traitor. Cool.
Yeah, I think for both of ours, we came in a little bit later, so the gap that needed to be filled was playing around with the tiles a little bit more. So for mine, it's the vines kind of like creeping in, and you're trying to like hack them back.
Nice.
And mine's finding the right portal. The illusionist has concealed the portal somewhere, and so you have to find the portal. And so both of those were manipulating tiles in some really interesting way. So they're both fun haunts, and they both kind of use more of a traditional traitor mechanic, though. So each one of them has like an actual traitor, as opposed to like a player versus enemy type of setting.
Very cool. James, have you had a chance to play through any of the Betrayal haunts?
I
Are you waiting
haven't.
for October 6th?
I have to, yes.
Well, we'll be doing lunchtime games, so you're welcome
All
to
right.
come down. We're gonna break it out there. So October 6th, Betrayal at Baldur's Gate hits stores. I want to say 50 haunts in this game as
50.
well, set in Baldur's Gate. We did a playthrough a couple weeks ago to kind of give a look at some of the haunts. We ran through Adam Lee's Priscilla, the Eye Gouger, which was suitably gross and creepy, but a lot of fun, as always. So look for that coming up soon. In addition, we've been discussing the extra life endeavors that have been taking place, and again, as always, for everyone that has donated their time, their finances, we appreciate it so much. Dungeons & Dragons is running their Extra Life event on November 3rd at Gamehole Con, rolling into November 4th with some of our live streamers taking part and some of the games taking place here at Wizards of the Coast, and culminating in another game, Gamehole Con in Madison, Wisconsin. That is November 3rd and November 4th for the Dungeons & Dragons team. But this year, we also have the Wizards of the Coast Super Team, which encompasses which unfortunately doesn't convey superpowers. That should be awesome. Just a title. But it encompasses the D&D team and also the Magic the Gathering team. And the Magic team will be running their event a bit earlier on October 13th. Now, A lot of it, of course, is going to be Magic play, but as took place last year, you're going to be running a Dungeons and Dragons adventure during the Magic event as well, correct?
Yeah, so there's a number of things that are going to be happening during the 24-hour live stream event. There'll be, your standard sort of Magic play happening. There's going to be some fun and wacky sealed formats and things with Magic play. But to kick it all off, starting at 6 a.m., the time that every D&D player wants to be rolling in to play Dungeons & Dragons.
Only if you've stayed up the night before.
Right, only if you stayed up the night before. There'll be lots of Mountain Dew consumed, I'm sure. But starting at 6 a.m., we're going to be running a D&D Ixalan adventure. So a D&D adventure that is set in the world of Ixalan. And it's going to be running for 4 hours. The adventure is called X Marks the Spot, and it will feature some really exciting stuff from the upcoming Plane Shift Ixalan that James has worked on.
So let me ask James about that as well. I think I'm making an assumption perhaps that folks know about Ixalan and what Ixalan is. Certainly we've talked about Tomb of Annihilation and set in the jungles of Chult. If you are familiar with Magic the Gathering, they have various planes. One of the new planes being introduced is Ixalan. Could you describe what that entails?
So Ixalan is a plane that's inspired by the Spanish conquest of Mesoamerica, which is kind of a prickly subject. So just imagine that the Spanish are vampires, and the native people of Mesoamerica have dinosaurs. And suddenly the two forces are on somewhat more even footing. And then you throw in pirates and merfolk to the mix, and you have this, it's a pretty fun world. We heard stories from pre-releases last week of people crying, "Yar!" as they draw their card in hope of getting a better top deck. Or I saw of people dressed up in dinosaur costumes at the pre-release.
Yeah, that T-Rex costume is super popular.
Yeah, in fact, when I was at HasCon a month ago now, I was spell slinging, playing Magic against fans who came up, and a guy came to the table to play me dressed as a dinosaur in one of those inflatable costumes.
I have a photo of you, actually. I should send it to you.
Yes, you should. It was me looking utterly surprised.
Right. Some good images I saw on the screen there a minute ago from art from Ixalan. Some of that may be making an appearance in the adventure.
Yes.
Awesome.
We will also run through a few of the cards, a few of the pieces of art to help introduce Ixalan, but part of it is also to use Ixalan as another Dungeon Master resource. And this is one of the things we've done with Plane Shift articles that James has created, which is dive into the flavor, the setting, the characters, monsters of Magic the Gathering, and make that available as a resource for Dungeons & Dragons play, for DMs looking to bring some of that into your game as well. Ixalan, it just seems so natural with Tomb of Annihilation and Chult that there's obvious ways that you could pull even more of that into your Tomb of Annihilation campaign. We're looking at a few of the images now.
That's a good one. Dowsing Dagger, right?
Don't ask me the real names of cards.
Oh, that's right. You work in playtest
I concepted that with some name, actually.
Temple of Aclazotz, I think.
Yeah.
Which is inspired by D&D Adventure.
Yeah.
The bat motif on the front of that temple is inspired by the old Adventure C1 from when I was a kid. The Hidden Shrine of Tomoe-chan.
Yep. Great
Which
adventure.
The original version of that adventure had a fire-breathing bat vampire being on the front cover, which got changed in a later version. But that's the one I had because I'm old.
I might still have one of those sitting in my library at home.
I had mine out recently.
So what can you tell us about X Marks the Spot specifically? How did you go about creating that adventure? What concepts did you want to introduce? What challenges were you interested in throwing at players? How does it play into the Extra Life format as well?
So I think going back a little bit, right? Kat and I both have expressed interest in bringing the Magic worlds to life in D&D adventures, and of course, James made it really easy because these amazing Plane Shift resources are available, right? that basically give you all this inspiration. And a lot of that's drawn from the other work that James has done on the art books, which is, if you read them, right, they almost feel like a campaign manual.
That's the deep dive. You
Right.
used that phrase a minute ago. The plane shift articles draw text from the art books. These are The Art of Magic the Gathering, world name, published by Viz Media, under license from Wizards of the Coast.
Our legal team thanks and approves of that statement.
So that's the deep dive into lore, where I skim off the top of that for the plane shift article and point you to the art book for more information.
Yeah, and those art books are kind of, have a name that is a little bit of a misnomer in a way.
Right.
Art is certainly kind of at the front and center of the book, but there's so much material in there from a lore perspective, right? There's so much background on the world and the setting and the characters in the world. And then there's also stuff on like the planeswalkers and what's happening in the sets as far as events are concerned, right? And then there's a little bit in the back sort of on how the sets were designed as well. But the books are like a treasure trove of resources, right? They're fantastic. I mean, if you're interested at all in them, I would hardly recommend picking up any of them. And so with this, I think we were interested in really writing adventures, because writing adventures is something that I'm very interested in. I think Kat would
Absolutely interested
agree.
in. As soon as I was introduced to D&D pretty late. It was about 3 years ago when we met.
It's never too late.
Yeah, but since then, I feel like I've been trying to catch up, because right now I'm currently in 3 weekly games and 1 play-by-mail. It's basically taken over my life.
You sound like my daughter. That's awesome.
Yeah, but the art books and the catalogs for the cards, they're just so beautiful and filled with so much flavorful text that you can't help but be inspired by it. Yeah, and the guides that you've written were really, really great. We wrote an Innistrad one together as well.
Yeah, and that's sort of the genesis of this. Actually, kind of was years ago, before I even met Kat. I was talking with a friend of mine at a gaming convention, and we were sitting around talking, and Innistrad had just come out, right? And
The original Innistrad.
The original
Yeah.
Innistrad, right? So this is like, I think, early 2012 we were having this conversation, so a couple of months after the set had come out.
And for folks who might not be familiar with Innistrad, that tends to be a gothic horror themed setting for Magic.
Yeah,
as well.
it's very similar in tone to Ravenloft. So they're kind of a lot of similarities in tone, right?
Well, Innistrad, Strahd.
Strahd. Yeah, there was a lot of confusion. But we were talking about it, and we were just like, he was expressing to me, he was mostly a role player, but he loved the gothic horror aspect of Innistrad, and so he picked up some cards, right? And he was looking at them, and we were looking at them, and he's like, man, I want to just use this as a storytelling tool and an adventure design tool for my D&D campaign, right? And create a D&D campaign based around Innistrad, right? And I thought, that's a really cool idea. That's awesome, right? And you're right. Like, there's so much just in the art and in the flavor text and the cards, right, that really inspires you. So that kind of just sat in my brain and rattled around in there for a while, right? And then the plane shift Zendikar came out first, right? And that was really amazing. And I knew the Innistrad one, working here has its privileges sometimes. I knew that the Innistrad one was coming out soon afterwards. I think I talked to James about that one. And I wanted to get access to it as early as I possibly could so we could work on an adventure. By that point, Kat and I had met, and Kat had expressed some desire, I think, in doing adventure design.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did that one for ahead of a con that we were both going to.
Yeah, we did that as just sort of a convention thing that we could run you could DM at a convention if we wanted to. And then later on, we kind of just rolled it into the Extra Life campaign last year, right?
Yeah.
So when this year came around, right, I was involved with the Extra Life team, the Magic Extra Life team, and what we had decided was, okay, we're actually going to go ahead and kind of get ahead of this as much as possible. So talked with James about it. He seemed open to the idea of providing some amount of that content a little earlier than normal. And, that's a cute dinosaur.
That's so cute.
That's the Magic Extra Life logo.
Yes.
All right.
Again, thanks to Emmy Tanji for creating the D&D and the Magic Extra Life logos.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And and we just kind of took some cues from the things that James had presented us, used some of the mechanical elements, mostly the new player character races that are presented in the Plane Shift Ixalan guide, and some of the monsters as well, which I think are going to be really fun to see in the adventure. James expressed very much interest in making sure that there was a specific monster placed in the adventure, and it is.
So if I'm hearing correctly, we've had Plane Shift Zendikar articles, Plane Shift Innistrad articles. There will be a Plane Shift Ixalan article.
I've always resisted making promises about this, but I guess at this point I really have to.
Yeah.
So the Art of Magic the Gathering Ixalan will come out in January.
Okay.
And we have typically timed the Plane Shift releases to coincide with the release of the art book, largely because I'm drawing so much information from the art book. So actually getting material to you was really early for me.
So there'll be playtesting in a way,
Right.
some of the Ixalan
Right.
material.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's some great stuff in there. It'll be a nice little preview, I think, for folks that are looking forward to seeing that Plane Shift Ixalan come out in January. So that's kind of the genesis of like how we got to where we got to, right? As far as the adventure design itself, Kat, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because she did a lot of the sort of the real work on the meat of the adventure, I guess.
Well, we had a conversation, and it was similar to how we approached Innistrad. We wanted to like thematically pick out what we wanted to do, and with Ixalan, it's very clear. Like it's about exploration, and you've got pirates and dinosaurs, and you can have a lot of fun with that. Whereas with Innistrad, it was more gothic horror, and we went with more of a mystery sort of element there. So with this one, it was let's look through the book and look at the cards and look at the locations. What sorts of locations do we want? What sorts of characters do we want? What sorts of like treasure?
Dinosaurs.
Absolutely, dinosaurs. Yes. And then just went from there. I think I can say where it starts, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So it starts in Conqueror's Foothold, which is like this ominous bastion fortification, and I don't know how much more I should say.
Yeah, I mean, you could spoil some things, but I would like to save some of it for the stream.
One of the tricks about Ixalan
Yeah.
is that from a magic perspective, it's a highly factionalized set.
Yeah.
We really a lot of tribal elements, so you're rewarded for playing cards with lots of dinosaurs in them, and Sun Empire priests and warriors that interact with dinosaur cards, or cards with lots of pirates in them, decks with lots of pirates in them.
Or pirate dinosaurs.
Or that's it's possible, but it's not ideal, right? So one of the tricks of role playing in Ixalan, which I suspect you had to deal with, is
was a challenge.
how to get characters. How does
Yes.
the merfolk and the vampire character end up working together?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually something we talked about a lot
Very
early
early
in
on,
the
yeah.
process. Was okay because we're talking about an experience. It's about a 3 to 4 hour play experience. It's a one-off, one session adventure, right? And it's pre-canned, right? Everything you need is there, right? You have your pre-generated characters, you have your adventure, so that gives you a lot more focus, right? And it's easier to design to that, especially kind of hone in like what kind of elements you want to express in the adventure. But when you're kind of approaching it from that angle, you have to think about the player characters early, right? And like, okay,
What is the thing that's going to bring them all together to have this adventure together?
Right.
Yeah.
And so we kind of started from, well, do we do like a pirate crew, right? And like, are they shipwrecked, right? And that seemed kind of fun. But then we were like, well, but we really wanted to make sure that people could see all the other tribes, right, in the adventure. So where we wound up with, I guess, Kat, if you want to talk a little bit about it.
So they're in Conqueror's Foothold because they're prisoners.
Okay.
And they do a prison escape together with the one goal in mind to get a relic, which I will not say. But that is their key to freedom. They do this, and they get everything they want, and they're free.
Find the relic and gain their freedom, and life is good.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there are obstacks along the
Hey,
way.
there's
can only
So
imagine.
many obstacles.
Yeah, there are.
There were so many fun obstacles to put in there.
That's awesome. So yeah, that's basically what's going to happen in the adventure, right? They're going to be spending a lot of time exploring Ixalan, right? Because we wanted to really kind of amp up the theme of exploration in this one, and so they're going to be traveling to different locales all around the world to try and find the relic.
That's awesome.
And I might be mistaken, but did you mention you might be pulling in some elements from Chult as well?
Yeah, so we do have a few things from Tomb of Annihilation.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, looking at James's material that he did for Plane Shift, there were some recommendations in there. There's a lot of similarities between Chult and Ixalan, right? And so, in particular, there's dinosaurs, right? That's the big one, right? So yeah, we have some.
These are some of the Tomb of Annihilation.
Tomb of Annihilation dinosaurs.
You guys have feathers on your dinosaurs too?
They have some feathers. That's more of a. It looks like more of a
does.
lion's mane, doesn't it?
Not only do we have feathers on some of our dinosaurs, some of our dinosaurs also vomit zombies.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's
Like that guy.
That we did not. We got no dinosaurs in the black color in Magic. So,
No, we don't have any black dinosaurs in the set, do we?
Nope.
So you had mentioned before, right? It's a tribal setting. So what does that exactly entail?
How basic do I go on Magic stuff? So the four groups are the Sun Empire, which is the people with the dinosaurs. There's the Legion of Dusk, the vampires. Mm-hmm. There's the River Heralds, the merfolk, and the Brazen Coalition, the pirates. Mm-hmm. So it's a four-way conflict, really. Nobody makes alliances unless they're temporary and shifting. But your cards might say, here's a priest of the Sun Empire, and your dinosaur spells cost 1 less to cast. Mm-hmm. Or here's a pirate that says, destroy target non-merfolk. That card happens to be called Walk the Plank. Mm-hmm. But other pirates would say, if you have a pirate, you do this.
Right.
That sort of thing. So tribal rewards within the mechanics of the cards.
Okay, so tribes, we're talking about groups of various creatures, factions, affiliations.
Right.
Yeah.
Expressed in these four for Ixalan.
Right.
Yeah, when we say tribal from a Magic side, what we mean is creature types.
Right. As opposed to any kind of cultural statement.
Right.
One of the reasons I wanted to ask was when you had mentioned there's no black dinosaurs, you just mean there's no dinosaurs set within the black.
In the color
right.
pie of
So
Magic. The black.
Each of the four
Magic.
groups, factions, is associated with 2 or 3 colors of the Magic color pie. So the Sun Empire is red, green, and white. The Legion of Dusk vampires are white and black. We've got white vampires for the first time in Magic's history. The pirates of the Brazen Coalition are blue, black, and red, and then the merfolk River Heralds are green and blue. We've got mono green merfolk for the first time in Magic's history. Doing some weird stuff.
Yep.
What can I ask about the decision for the white vampires? First time appearing in the white colors?
Primarily, it has to do with the conquistador archetype, I guess. This rigidly hierarchical society.
Oh, there we go.
Driven by a religious ideology, so they fit into kind of many of the ideals of white, which is not a D&D alignment. White is not always good, black is not always evil, red is not always, red is pretty often chaotic.
It's pretty hard to have a lawful red person.
Right. So the vampires, their religious beliefs tell them, for example, that they can only feed on the blood of heretics, people that have been branded anathema by the church. And the white vampires follow that rule because they're white. They follow rules. The black vampires, maybe not so much. They're more apt to abuse their power and feed where they shouldn't, and that sort of thing. Maybe that's part of the reason why they got shipped overseas to this other world where they can't cause trouble back home.
Interesting. All right.
Well, and the vampire that's the playable character in the adventure is clearly like a more white-aligned vampire. She's a member of the priesthood.
Awesome.
So again, if you're interested in watching the Magic Extra Life adventure in Ixalan, the D&D adventure set in Ixalan, that's October 13th. It'll be starting at 6
a.m.
6 a.m.
Yeah,
Pacific time.
6 a.m. Pacific time, yeah.
So you people on the East Coast are a little luckier.
Right, exactly. Right. And the other thing that's important to note, I think, about the adventure is that it will feature some Magic cards, too, as a game aid. So we do have a treasure deck. We've taken some really cool artifacts from Ixalan and basically made a treasure deck so that when the players are discovering things around Ixalan, they could discover a treasure, and they'll draw a card randomly from the deck, and then that particular Magic card will be keyed to a certain D&D Magic item, right? It'll have some sort of mechanical representation in D&D as well.
That's awesome. When I first started working at Wizards, I played in a D&D group with a distant predecessor of mine on the Magic Story team, Deneen McDermott, who, this was the early days before there were official D&D miniatures, but we wanted stuff on the battle mat. She used to take a 1-inch punch and punch out images from Magic cards and use them as tokens on the grid.
That's cool.
It's awesome art and inspiring creatures and characters.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I had the notes. There's been an awful lot through the years of Magic and D&D. The Venn diagram has crossed over more than once.
In terms of people or in terms of gameplay? I guess both.
Both. Definitely in terms of people. Certainly between sessions, it was a quick and easy game to pick up, and a lot of times that's what people did in my gaming group. But also just some of the flavor, some of the story, some of the characters. I know in the Legends set, some of the Legend cards, I believe, if I'm not getting it incorrect, were based on
characters in somebody's D&D game.
Yes.
Yes, were based on some of their D&D characters.
I just read that on Wikipedia recently or someplace, so it must be true.
It's online, James.
Yep.
It's got to be true. We're online, so everything we say has got to be true now. Even the 5 colors, and this is a supposition, but it's intriguing to me that the 5 colors of Magic map so nicely to the 5 colors of, say, Tiamat. And I don't know if that's by intention.
That's actually weird, because if you were to make a dragon in each of Magic's 5 colors, they would not. Their breath weapons specifically would not map to the D&D dragon's breath weapons.
Tiamat's white dragon head would not heal you as she engulfs you.
Right, right. It'd be the blue dragon who was breathing ice at you. And,
Right.
yeah.
Oh.
Ooh. Our light turned
It just
on.
got dark in here, except
Not too
not
dark.
for the camera.
Not for the camera, at least. There we go.
Oh, it's because nobody was moving.
We're doing
We're
a
moving
lot.
enough.
Yes.
We got to move more.
The trials and tribulations
Yes.
of a live stream. Every once in a while, if you don't move enough, the lights in your room think you're not here, and they will go out.
It's all good.
One of the other ways that I lost my train of thought. Dungeons and Dragons and Magic crossed over, obviously with Ixalan in the sets. They're set in the jungle. They have dinosaurs, and dinosaurs. This kind of sparked this thought when you were talking about punching out Magic cards to use as miniatures. Dinosaurs go back quite a ways in Dungeons and Dragons as well. I imagine, again, supposition, when Gary and company were first sitting around the table looking for monsters to put out for the players to fight, we had dinosaurs were plastic toys.
Those plastic toys, the bag that you could get at the grocery store, right?
Yes.
You know, filled with plastic toys. And
I'm pretty sure I had some of those exact models.
Well, and they were supposedly the inspiration for monsters like the Bulette and Rust monster, right?
So these were
Crawler.
some of the
Carrying
art
Crawler.
pieces from the first edition Monster Manual. And yes, there were plastic dinosaurs, I imagine, but there were also the Bulette, the Owl Bear, the Rust Monster. There's some dime store plastic toys that also hit the table. So.
And a lot of those were mixed in the bag with the dinosaurs. So you just buy the bag of dinosaurs, you'd be like, this isn't a dinosaur. You know, even 7-year-old me knew this wasn't a dinosaur, but it was kind of cool, right? It was like this monster, and it was like, yeah, this is cool.
And the originators must have thought so as well. Hey, this is a monster now.
Yep.
Every once in a while, you see some of those original plastic monsters show up on eBay, and every once in a while, I'm so tempted to go on there and spend
They're so cool.
$40 for a little original Rust monster. But these are, yes, as originally depicted back in the day, they were as early in the first edition Monster Manual, which is a book that strikes to my heart just because the game, Dungeons & Dragons, felt free to incorporate lots of different monsters from lots of different genres.
Absolutely.
Horror, dinosaurs, whatever else was going to work.
Yeah, and our depictions of dinosaurs have come just such a long way, right? You know,
Yes.
I mean, you know, if you look at the dinosaurs in Tomb of Annihilation, you know, and the dinosaurs in Ixalan, they both they're definitely different, right? They have a different aesthetic to them.
Are
right?
you saying this piece of art has evolved slightly?
Yeah, a little bit
from our black and white.
This is
ones?
one of my
sailbacks.
favorites.
Yeah,
I love
this
that
is
so
great.
much.
Me too.
So we're mixing up a few here, which by design, some Tomb of Annihilation art and some of the card art from the Magic Ixalan.
Yeah, there's a Tomb of Annihilation dinosaur.
Pretty cool.
Charging monsters are.
So
Always stay with the boat. Oh, I have another story. Maybe I've told this story. I've told this story a zillion times, but I'm going to tell it anyway.
tell us the story.
I was also one of the lead designers on the Eberron campaign setting in 2003 or whatever. And I went on a crusade at that time about naming the dinosaurs because we don't call the little red-breasted songbird that shows up in spring around here a Turdus turdus.
Right.
Why do we call this thing a Stegosaurus or a Tyrannosaurus rex? Exactly the same thing, sort of.
Sort of.
So the dinosaurs in Eberron, I made a little table that showed here's the scientific real-world name of the dinosaur, and here's what it is in Draconic, and here's what the ordinary people of Eberron call it. So swordtooths and things like that, and I made up Draconic words that translate it anyway.
Which was odd because back in the first edition Monster Manual,
They were just
They
brontosaurs.
just were they were
right.
just the.
But so
So
I-
even the dragons had those Latin.
That's right.
Yes.
Imposed the Latin
That's
the
right.
other way
Right.
on some of the monsters.
Yeah. But so I was on this crusade to make sure the dinosaurs were cool, awesome fantasy monsters, just like dragons and displacer beasts and rust monsters. Sure.
Yeah, they could have existed. Right?
So naming the dinosaur cards for Ixalan proved to be a challenge because I started off in the same direction, and I got a lot of feedback from people saying it doesn't sound like a dinosaur to me. I don't want to call this a swordtooth. I want to call it a tyrannosaur. We ended up in a middle ground where we get things like Monstrosaur or Ceratops that sound like they could be dinosaur names, and they're not actually. And that gives us plausible deniability from the scientists.
That's my.
Right.
We're looking at the Monstrosaur.
Yep.
That's my favorite name for that
Monstrosaur.
crossover.
There's
I
also
like
the
that
Regisaur.
Ferocidon.
Ferocidon is great. Yeah, there's some really good. Yeah, the blend of names is really fun. Right.
Yeah, I'm really happy with the spot where I ended up.
That's great.
So.
And I remember this myself as a kid, and now as the parent of a 4-year-old, it still befuddles me to no end. Of all the words that they learn, somehow you just pick up the dinosaur names
Yeah.
out of nowhere. He can tell you an ankylosaur from a hadrosaur from
Yeah.
a stegosaurus.
My daughter is the one who was standing at the display in the Smithsonian Museum telling another kid that this was actually the Jurassic period because or because it's the Jurassic period, clearly that's an allosaur and not a tyrannosaur, something like that.
That's great.
Yeah, sorry, world.
I was a huge fan of dinosaurs growing up. It was like my favorite thing in the whole world for years, right? So I memorized all of the dinosaur names and knew all the facts, right? So I have a very soft spot for dinosaurs.
Ashley was telling me the other day her two favorite things growing up as a child were ancient Egypt and dinosaurs, and this year has been a very good year for her in Magic.
yeah.
Because just before Ixalan was Amonkhet, our Egypt-inspired set.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yes, again, there's been a few crossovers through the years between Magic and Dungeons and Dragons. Even at HasCon, which you had mentioned attending a couple of weeks ago, one of the promo items was the set of Magic cards, including the Sword of Dungeons and Dragons. Which, if you put it on the table, if it did damage, you roll a d20. And
Makes a gold dragon token.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's great.
With the chance to keep rolling. If you roll a 20, you got to keep rolling.
Yeah.
Keep making dragon tokens as well. One of my favorite things we've done on the website for years past was our April Fool's articles. At one point, a few years ago, we created a Dritzt Magic card and managed to get buy-off from the Magic team. So thank you for that, which is not table legal, but one of our endeavors. Way back when, one of my first years working here, we put together the My Little Pony TRPG as an April Fool's Day article, and now it seems like it's actually
Another HasCon promo.
Yeah.
Little
Yeah.
Pony dice.
Yeah.
My daughters, all the kids in the house love them.
everyone.
These are 20-year-olds.
In the Wizards of the Coast offices.
Yes.
It's currency to get your hands on the My Little Pony sparkly dice, which were super cool.
They are. I love the art too on the tin, right? The pony art is just great. Them reimagined as adventurers is fantastic.
Yeah, I think that came from a project Chris Dupuis had worked on.
It was the
I've got the tank
t-shirt.
top.
Yeah.
So cute.
Again, and he had been running Extra Life for the last couple of years, but I think that was also a T-shirt design for charity.
Yeah, it was.
It was the My Little Pony T-shirt. So, in any case, yes. So I did want to spend a little time taking a quick survey through some of the Magic Ixalan cards. Just to get a sense from you for where maybe the story design originated, some of the concepting behind it, and then from everyone, possible advice you might have for breaking open a pack of Magic cards and how you might implement it into your Dungeons and Dragons campaign. So we took a look in the Ixalan set. As mentioned, there are some new dinosaurs that can make their appearance if you want to include them in your Tomb of Annihilation game. They might be new creatures in Chult. This one I noticed just because dinosaurs, as have come up recently in Guild Adept materials, are becoming available now for druidic wild shaping and summoning spells.
And there's a lot of new material available for those druids now, right? All those beasts, right, that you can turn into. That's great.
But I also like the idea, the last one and this one especially, of little companions that you might want to, a familiar, a wizard's familiar, or
a paladin steed.
A paladin
steed, Ranger's beast companion, right? This guy here actually is one of the beast companions in the adventure. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
One of the things with the Sun Empire and dinosaurs is I tried really hard to avoid ever using the word tamed or domesticated, because they're not. If you're walking around with a dinosaur, it's because you have exerted control over it, and you're working hard to maintain that control. Nature cannot be tamed in this way. To make sure they kept their ferocious monstrosaur edge.
So as potential pack animals or the like in a Chult or Tomb of Annihilation, these would be somewhat grudging and dangerous beasts to consider bringing along.
Yep.
Keep them all fed.
Yep.
Yes.
I could see a really cool alternate, like, familiar table that uses either like the Chultan sort of mix of animals, right? Or if you're going to go into Ixalan, right, that mix of animals to include things that are like dinosaurs and other things into the mix too as well. So
obviously lots of great dinosaurs. Now we're kind of looking at some of the pirates. So for Tomb of Annihilation, you're certainly on a jungle peninsula. The option to sail around the coast is always there. Eventually, in the campaign, you're going inland, exploring. To your point. But I thought a lot of these Ixalan cards could make great NPC material for folks that might consider sidetracks or other encounters along the coast with some of the pirate denizens.
Hey, look at Jace. What happened to his shirt?
He's been marooned.
So in Ixalan, when you're creating the story, pirates as a tribal faction, how do they play sort of into the story of Ixalan itself?
So they come from the so-called Old World, the continent that is not Ixalan proper, across the sea, where the vampires are also coming from. They're basically the vampires' first victims. As the vampires expanded and conquered that whole continent, they drove the free peoples, the free cities out before them, and they became the pirates of the Brazen Coalition. When they arrived on the continent, Ixalan, they tried to make trade with the Sun Empire. They were rebuffed. They ended up establishing a city that floats on the ocean, high and dry, it's called, and subsisting on raiding and piracy instead of portrayed.
And so a lot of animosity, I imagine, between the
Yes.
two sides.
Yes, between all four sides. Nobody likes each other. It's a game about fighting.
Well, our adventure has everybody working together, at least briefly.
Because it's a game about cooperating
Right, exactly.
to fight.
To fight, right. You're still fighting stuff. Don't worry.
Right,
There's
right.
lots of fun.
Yeah, there's lots of, yeah.
So if we look at a few more cards, we've got the dinosaurs, we have the pirates. I think I threw in a couple of the merfolk as well to give a. Here's a look at a couple of the merfolk. So how did these become further concepted from magic into Ixalan, or sort of what's their story in this in this block?
The I guess two sides of that. They live in the great river of Ixalan and all its tributaries. So they count the 9 major tributaries that flow into the great river as the most important, and the shamans of the headwaters. Wow, deep dive.
Yeah. we
myself doing this every once in a while.
we like our deep dives.
So the shamans who control the
Plus it's
territory at
merfolk,
the
so-
headwaters of these tributaries are the most important. Gopala is not one of them,
Nope.
but Tishana has a card in the set. She's one of actually the most prominent of the 9.
The Shaper, right? Is that what they call them?
Shaper is the title for the shamans generally, yeah.
Yeah.
So they talk about water existing in a circle that includes the river below and the sky above, and the jungle through which the water flows up from the ground to get the blue aspect of water and wind, and also the green aspect of the growing of the jungle. So they're very druidy, rangery in D&D terms.
Sure.
Visually, they're really a whole new design for magic. We were going for something that looks more like tropical fish. Cynthia Shepard, who was my co-creative lead on the set and the art director for the set, actually did a lot of research in talking to people who play tribal merfolk decks, because it is a thing. There's some number of people who build
very
decks
powerful.
around merfolk. But to get a sense of what they imagine their decks representing and how they feel about these creatures, and came up with a look for them. She talks about simultaneously grounded and graceful. So there's some pieces where they're just dancing, literally, and they're flowing fins. They're just beautiful. And we needed them to stand solidly on their own feet in the company of vampires and dinosaurs and pirates, which are kind of the big draws for a lot of people. But then the merfolk are a solid choice for building around and rooting for.
Well, the art on some of it is so gorgeous, like you say. Like there's one that's like a tree. She's walking on the tree, and her fins are in the back, waving in the breeze. It's just gorgeous. It's like I haven't seen merfolk represented in that way before. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And they don't have, tails like you'd think
Right.
of a lot of merfolk, like for example, some merfolk in D&D might have those, right? They actually can walk on 2 legs, right? And I think all the other depictions of merfolk and magic have had them be a little bit more fish-like.
Magic has done both for a long time.
Yeah.
I wrote in Dragon Magazine number 250 back in 1990-something.
Oh, I have that one.
Merfolk as a player-character race. And my long-standing campaign is on a water world, and I've always been doing stuff with aquatic races and things. Giving them feet actually really helps.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
So,
they can climb ladders effectively, right?
Zendikar's merfolk have feet, so when I did the first plane shift, Zendikar, I was able to do a merfolk race, and I said, wait a minute, I'm using this in my home campaign instead of the ones with tails.
Or you could go Daryl Hannah style, where once they're out of the
That's
water,
right.
Right,
That's right.
absolutely.
They develop feet. And once they get wet, there's the tail.
I also went on a bizarre tangent today trying to figure out where the word merfolk originated, because
Because we
I
have
can't
mermaid
prove,
and merman, right?
Right. I can't prove that the first occurrence of the word was on a magic card in 1993, but I have not yet seen evidence otherwise. And from 2000, that's been the standard term in D&D as well.
Yes.
But before that, it was merman.
Right.
So again, some great points of inspiration for consideration, including your Tomb of Annihilation campaign, added pirates, added merfolk. There's additional undead that I thought made nice representations on the Ixalan cards that work well in D&D for Chult jungles.
Skeletal pirates are really cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go. Oh, there they are, right there.
Chult certainly has its share of zombies, and we've seen those in our recent live stream shows. But I loved in Ixalan just taking the flavor of, you've got a lot of pirates, you've got a lot more shipwrecks and marooning that takes place, and pirate skeletal undead wandering further inland in search of who knows what, crossing adventurers' paths.
There's a card in the set called Grim Captain's Call. The name actually came from a piece of flavor text that was submitted, possibly the same piece of flavor text that is also on the card. I like extracted the name from it anyway. I just love the hint of pirate mythology there, of the Grim Captain calling the dead.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It didn't really go into that. They're like the one of these four cultures that doesn't have a detailed religion. Which is kind of unusual for Magic, but not for me.
So a couple more cards to showcase. 28, I think, is one of our Sentinels. And I liked him, just again, if you're looking for potential guardians for ruins or lost cities. There's
a few in the set that are basically, golems, right?
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, and there's some really great evocative art. I like the red one, the fire one. A lot. I can't remember his final name, but
Me neither.
you can look it up. It's really easy to find. But just look in the player's guide in the bundle. But yeah, there's almost like, I don't know if there's a cycle of them, but there's definitely a bunch of them. These guardians, and those are those remnants of an older time?
Yeah. So, being a D&D player, when I was building the continent of Ixalan, I did a lot of. I wrote a couple of pages on ancient sites because there is this sense that part of the thrust of the story is searching for the golden city of Erazka and the immortal sun, powerful artifact that lies within it. So that used to be the capital of the Sun Empire. When they lost control of the immortal sun, they were driven out to the coast where they live now, but they're trying to get back in. So there's all these ruins scattered throughout the jungle that show up on cards like the Temple of Aklazats, which was in fact called the Lost Temple for a while, or the place with that golem, or the one with the fire elementally golem thing. So just a sense of the history of this place and of D&D exploration into these old ruins.
That's what made it really evocative, I think, for us, was just like, there's all these great, like, flavorful, places and locales in the set, and they're represented. There's unclaimed territory right there. They're represented by, not only some of the lands. It's very normal for a Magic set, right? You can open up some booster packs. You'll see some land cards in it, right? And those will give you a really good sense of the landscapes, right? And kind of immerse you in the setting in that way. But there's also a cycle of cards, and Dowsing Dagger is one side of one card, right? That are these double face. So what'll happen is, you'll play the card to begin with, and then something will trigger it flipping over to the other side. And on the other side of all of these cards, they are all locations in Ixalan. They're all land cards that are very specific locations in Ixalan. And they all have this gorgeous art. And they all also are sort of in the world of Ixalan, and we're revealing the map right now of Ixalan, and you can see some of those pieces online. I think the final reveal is coming up soon of the map, right? The final pieces are going to be falling into place soon. And that map is the first time in a while we've done an actual map of, like, a piece of a magic plane, right?
It might be the only plane other than Dominaria that has an official map.
Yes. So it's quite cool. And so for D&D players, right, I love maps. I know you love maps, right? That makes Ixalan a great setting because you have a map, right? The map's got, points of light on it, right? It's got little civilizations and also, like, locations and ruins and things like that on it. So you can actually really tie everything together as far as, like, if you're going to create adventures or a campaign around, like, exploring this continent.
And very much so. And as we get to the top of the hour, and unfortunately, start wrapping things up. I did want to just reiterate that was meant to be the point of today's conversation. Was we love adding toys to the Dungeon Master's toy box. Yes. Tomb of Annihilation certainly you can run as written, or you can take pieces and use them in your home campaigns as desired. And it just felt like a great time to talk about Ixalan coming out, and that these are further tools that you could add to your Dungeon Master toy box. More dinosaurs, more monsters, more rumors and legends. Maybe this city exists or not. Maybe some of these other elements exist in the jungles of Chult. Maybe more of these pirate elements exist along on the coastal edges. So before we leave, and I'll put this, yes, this was my favorite pirate art of the set.
Oh, yeah.
Admiral Beckett Brass.
The name was great. The art was great.
Behind her back, they call her Bucket of Brass.
And if we've got the image for number 30, it made me feel bad for them, but it also seemed like a tip of the hat for dinosaurs, that you had to have this giant, meteor strike coming down to.
Doesn't actually happen in the story. No. As the flavor text communicates, it's a vision of a possible future.
Yep.
Which is a good image to end our Dragon Plus live stream on.
A vision of a possible future.
Right. Okay.
But just to reiterate a few things, we mentioned Betrayal at Baldur's Gate is coming out on October 6th in a few days. There's a couple adventures written in it from Chris Tulloch and Kat Kruger. We also have the Magic Extra Life event taking place October 13th with X Marks the Spot, the D&D adventure bringing in Ixalan elements that will be run on the live stream as well. The D&D Extra Life event taking place November 3rd and November 4th. I will say Ixalan is in stores now, so if you want to get your hands on a few packs, open them up as potential inspiration for your D&D campaigns. And the Ixalan art book coming out in January with the Plane Shift article to follow.
Around the same time.
Around the same time. Okay. Well, as we mentioned, we set it on the internet, so now it has.
That's right.
True.
Yep.
Yes.
I've made a commitment.
Yep.
I better get back to work.
Good news, James. You already did a lot of it. Way earlier than normal.
I still have a lot to do.
Yeah.
As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to our subscribers and everyone in the chat stream. We love looking at your comments along the way. Again, feel free to send in suggestions if you already haven't for Adam Lee's Extra Life donation levels. Apologies if you've sent in questions. We didn't have a chance to grab too many of those. I did see that the Plane Shift date coming out being one of those, so thank you for addressing that.
Sorry I talked so much.
No, that's why we wanted to have everyone here on the live stream today.
You can listen to James talk all day. Just
I can talk all day.
tell me all the secrets, James.
People like the stories. We
Yep.
saw that coming through as well.
Awesome.
So we'll be back. We'll take a short break, reset for D&D News at 3:30. And for folks waiting for Dice Camera Action, we will be airing them today at 4 p.m. Pacific, 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific for Dice Camera Action. So I'm your host, Bart Carroll. Thank you to my guests, James Wyatt, Kat Kruger, and Chris Tulloch.
Bye.